everybody? How y'all doing? Welcome back to Reading with Shallow. What up, everybody? I'm Shallow. I'm out you, baby. What is the business? Hope everybody had a wonderful resting period. Oh, I got me a little bit in. Got me a little slumber. And now we're ready to start the next episode of Reading with Shallow, where we're going to jump back into medical apartheid by Miss Harriet A. Washington. We are on chapter 5. We're on chapter 5 right now. Chapter 5. Chapter 5, The Restless Dead. Anatomical dissection and display. Yeah, we were able to push through chapter 4 last night. Man, I had the third reading last night. We were able to push through chapter 4 and make our way to chapter 5 in a sea of pages. We done rowed our boat to Island 5. 15 islands in this sea. 15 islands in this section of the Sea of Pages. Yeah, but so far so good, man. If you have not heard of the medical apartheid, if you have not read the medical apartheid, it is definitely turning out to be informative, a very, thought-provoking and book. It's turning out to be a good book, a very good book so far. A lot of the information that it has been showing, and it's stuff I agree with, stuff I kind of had the assumptions of these things were happening and still happening in this time today. So, hey, it's doing good. We're filling this in. What's up, my son? Oh, my son. I love you, my son. I love you too. I'm watching you, boy. You better be finishing your schoolwork. I'm watching you. You always want to come back here and give your daddy hugs and stuff. Huh? I don't mind the hugs, but you better be finishing schoolwork. Yes, sir. All right. Now go finish your schoolwork, son. Love you. Yeah, so, the medical apartheid, man. A lot of people still getting caught up in the experimentation that they were pulling in yesteryear. I mean, yesteryear, the 1800s, they were pulling these experimentations. And the doctors and physicians of today's time are still pulling these experimentations, if you ask me. The differences in the treatment in the hospitals looks the same from the descriptions, from what the descriptions are. The reasoning for the hospitals looks still the same. They were never meant to really cure anybody. Well, they're there for experimentations. They're working on cures, but it don't make sense how you're working on inferior, what is considered to the early physicians as inferior, to try to fix or cure the superior. It would seem that if you worked, logically, if you worked on the superior, then you could heal anything in the inferior, because if that was the case. But we're going to continue to read and grab through some of the portions of the memoirs that Miss Washington has gathered together and linked together and put on the pages so eloquently for our reading. Anyway, shalom, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to Reading with Shallow. So, let's get it in. So we're going to start off, before we get to starting the book, we're going to work our body, work our mind with reading, and then we're going to backdoor on the end and work our body again. So, what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks, trying to make sure I build a habit and try to stay consistent. We do 25 things. No, it's not heavy. It's not heavy. I carved it. So, yeah, we're going to do 25 things. Yes. 25 things. So get off your lazy behind this morning or today. If you have been able to open your eyes, hear, talk, speak, move, smell, think, then you have everything you need to succeed today. You have everything you need to succeed. Get off your behind and let's start to succeed. So I'm gonna start with 25 things. You do your 25, whatever's good for you. Whatever's good for you, but start somewhere. Don't cheat yourself, man. Do something. You may need that little extra push, man, to get off and move forward. Shit. Let's get it though. I'll do that. Let's get it. 25 things. 25 lighters on my dresser. 25 things. You do your 25 and I'm gonna do mine. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I feel like I'm hitting somebody. 6. Ooh. 25. Don't stop. 7, 8, 9. I'm about to switch it up, man. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 25 things. 25. Whatever 25 you got to do, just make sure you're doing 25 things. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 25 things. 25 things. Yeah, I don't really deal with too much sports people. Right now, we're about to deal with Miss Harriet Washington. So, gather your stuff. Get prepared as we take a voyage. Take a voyage on a sea of pages with Miss Harriet Washington. The medical apartheid. The dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to present is the award-winning Medical Apartheid, Chapter 5, The Restless Dead. The Restless Dead. All right, let's go. Anatomical dissection and display. In Baltimore, the bodies of colored people exclusively are taken from dissection or for a dissection because I'm tired. Oh, that 50-pound weight bust me up. Because I was putting my back into it. My bad. In Baltimore, the bodies of colored people exclusively are taken for dissection because the whites do not like it and the colored people cannot resist. No place in the United States offers as great opportunities for the acquisition of anatomical knowledge, and subjects being obtained from among the colored population in sufficient numbers for every purpose and proper dissection carried on without offending any individuals in our community. Advertisement for the South Carolina Medical College in 1831. Ooh-wee. On September 11th of 1977, Casper Yegan, a 68-year-old retired auto mechanic, vanished. His sister, Pearlie Smith, with whom he lived, contacted a police officer in the Washington, D.C. Missing Persons Unit and provided the photograph he requested. He said he would be back, but I didn't hear anything, and Smith told the Washington Post. And so, for more than a month, Smith, Yegan's niece, Minnie Champ, and other family members were made relentless inquiries of the police and at the 5th District Station House. They also called area hospital emergency departments, which the officers should also have done, and everyone with whom they spoke assured them that Yegan had never been brought into a hospital until Champ called the police again on November 1st, 1977, and reached the officer with whom Smith had first spoken. He visited them again and made several telephone calls, which revealed that his original report had never been properly filed, and the police made other errors as well. The officer had never personally checked emergency rooms, and the missing persons unit had not followed procedure by checking Yegan's description against a list of recently deceased, unidentified patients. When police did so, they finally found Yegan's body on a slab in the anatomy laboratory of Howard University's medical school, where he was on the verge of being dissected by students. And while his family had searched for him and repeatedly called police, he had lain unconscious in the hospital. And when he died on November 3rd, his remains were sent to the medical examiner's office. Through some lottery or something, they decided to award his body to one of the medical schools, and it wound up at Howard. Dr. Lyndon Rayford, then the school's assistant medical director, told the Washington Post. And on January 4th of 1978, police used fingerprints to identify Yegan. Rayford's forthright allusion to the misplaced patient and cadaver lottery is troubling enough, but Champ nursed an even darker view of the affair. She told the Post her uncle had been found up in the lab, and they were making experiments. We were not making any, quote, experiments, Dr. Rayford dryly demurred. I wonder if that's part of that word people have been saying around here. Champ found it difficult to believe the hospital had made good faith errors, but natural causes was unable to tell his family from what illness he had suffered. Also, Yegan's pockets had contained the name and telephone number of a nephew, yet this man had never been called. And Yegan's family was haunted by a plethora of unanswered questions from what disease did Yegan die? Why had hospital personnel failed to report his presence or to contact his nephew? So they took their quest for answers and justice to the courts, suing the D.C. city government and Howard University Hospital for negligence. Judge Nicholas Nanzio dismissed the negligence charges against the hospital, but a District of Columbia Superior Court jury decided against the city, awarding the family $53,000 and some answers. The ruling against the city and the award were reversed on appeal, but the answers revealed to Yegan's family how he came to end up in the anatomy laboratory. And on September 11th, the police had taken the inebriated Yegan to the detoxification center. The paper in his wallet with his nephew's name and address was ignored and placed with Yegan's possessions in storage at the center. And when he grew ill the next day, Yegan was taken to Howard University Hospital without these items and admitted as a John Doe. Now, over the next months, hospital staffers repeatedly told Yegan's sister that no one of his description had been admitted, even though he was the only unidentified patient in the hospital during this period. And when Yegan died, his body was taken to the medical examiner's office, which donated it to Howard University Medical School. It's amazing how easily they could just do these things back then. And they still most likely do these things today, especially when you have, when you think about all the missing persons that they have when you go on to Walmart or back in the day you used to be on the milk cartons and stuff like that. All these missing persons that haven't been found. And when you read the things that were done and how they would just take people, if they found you drunk and you couldn't tell them no, or you couldn't fight to defend yourself, baby, you might be in somebody's laboratory and experimented on, or amputated, or whatever, whatever, drugged up, drunked up. Among other things, Yegan's story illustrates a classic discord in interpretation between many African Americans and medical personnel. Intentionally or not, Yegan and his family were certainly abused and exploited. But like many African Americans, many Champ imputed a darker motive to the hospital than was indicated by the facts. One factor feeding the friction between Yegan's family and the hospital may have been a confusion of the concepts of experimentation, dissection, and autopsy. Human experimentation entails an induced change that is carefully controlled and monitored to reveal medical and scientific information. And dissection, from the Latin verb dissecare, means to cut apart. This procedure is undertaken to identify and examine the body's components during, for example, medical education. This is a surgical process that Yegan's body had been on the verge of undergoing. Autopsy and necropsy are the terms used for the investigative dissection by physicians who are attempting to determine the cause of other circumstances of a person's death. Yes, sir.
Now that one was what?
Yeah. Your long johns back on?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Put them back on, but you have to put them on underneath those underneath your sweatpants. The hospital personnel, who in this case happened to be primarily African American, cast the Yegan incidents as a regrettable fluke, rare and unlikely to be repeated. Yeah, right. But is this characterization supported by the facts? How often do the bodies of the poor, the homeless, the friendless, or those who, like Yegan, simply look that way to medical personnel end up on the anatomy tables? What roles has race played in such events, yesterday and today? There's still a question. The short answer is that the bodies of African Americans were once at the highest risk of being used for anatomy. Man, it made me think about what's that movie? Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, right there. That's what them pink people was back in the day. Invaders taking bodies. And they still are invaders taking bodies today. The short answer is that the bodies of African Americans were once at the highest risk of being used for anatomy. In many areas, the majority of cadavers in research or dissection laboratories were Black. But today, that risk has shrunk dramatically for African Americans. Experts claim that mostly white bodies are used today, but they can produce no good ethnic national data to quantify this. Because the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act of 1968, we might have to look that up. The Anatomical Gift Act of 1968. Let me see if I have that. Oh, let's slide on them. Let's see if it's in. Anatomical gift act. Let's see if we can find some information on it. Up in this encyclopedia. This Encyclopedia Americana. From 1829. 1829. This thing was first complete in 30 volumes, published in 1829. Anatomical Gift Act of 1968. Anatomical. I need number one. Anatomical. Anesthesia. Yes, sir.
35 last night, so you put the wrong one.
Say it again, sir.
Man was on 35 last night.
Man finished 35 last night? Yesterday? Okay, so this is what I need you to do for me. Take 35 out and put 36 in for me, sir.
That's what I was telling man.
Okay, and then fast forward through the beginning part on the fast forward through the pledge. Get to where she's get to the Bible part, and then go ahead and start from there. Thank you for coming to tell me. Anatomical Gift Act of 1968. Anatomy of melancholy, nervous system, anatomical. We're close. I think we're close. It's not in here. It's not in here. Anatomical anatomy is in here, but not Anatomical Gift Act of 1968. The Anatomical Gift Act of 1968. I would love to know what that is. Oh well. Let's keep pushing. All right. The Anatomical Gift Act, because the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act of 1968 provides for the distribution of unclaimed bodies to medical schools and other public and private consumers of human cadavers and tissues. And because minority groups are overrepresented among the poor and homeless who constitute the bulk of these bodies, all indications suggest that Black bodies are still more likely than whites to populate dissection laboratories. I agree. I agree. Until the last century, American medical practitioners shared a deep frustration with much of Europe. Anatomical dissection had become key to physician training, but because the procurement of cadavers and often dissection itself was illegal and socially unacceptable, doctors and their porters had to employ a macabre creative leveled with criminal force to secure the bodies of the recently deceased for dissection. It sounds like some Dr. Frankenstein stuff. These bodies tended to be black. The attitudes of the white Southerners, both towards the use of human bodies in medical education and towards blacks, were silently but clearly revealed in the medical profession's heavy reliance on Negro cadavers. Observed Todd L. Savitt. Hospitals habitually delivered black bodies directly from the wards to the autopsy tables without asking anyone's consent. And to date, the legacy of this post-mortem racism survives in policies that continue to appropriate the bodies of the friendless paupers, such as the homeless, a disproportionate number of whom are black for medical purposes. Man. Medical educators hold that dissection is necessary because students must familiarize themselves with the human body before they treat living patients. And who, they ask, would wish to be treated on by a doctor who had never personally investigated and familiarized herself with a human body? Why is it herself? Why is it not his or herself? However, recent studies show that fewer people are donating their bodies for medical education. And in the 2004 Johns Hopkins report, only 49% of those surveyed said that they would consider donating their bodies. Worse, up to 70% fewer African Americans said they would donate. And race and education were the most important determinants. African American literacy was still widely outlawed and remained low in affected communities until the early 20th century. So witnesses spread the information about this exploitation of black bodies via oral traditions that alerted others to the danger, but sometimes exaggerated its extent. I doubt it. I really doubt it was exaggerated. I really doubt it. Word of mouth spread the reputation of hospitals and medical schools, which were not typically affiliated with hospitals until the middle of the 19th century, as repositories for black bodies that had been stolen under cover of darkness by night doctors for use in medical dissection rooms and laboratories. This oral tradition is frequently dismissed as old wives' tales and superstition because tales of the theft of black bodies sound fantastic to many whites. And to African Americans who pride themselves on their scientific sophistication, many people assume that belief in the theft of black bodies is paranoia born of a violently racist history. But Janie Gaines and Sarah Cox know from experience that black cadavers tend to disappear. And in January of 1998, which is very recent, 98, the sisters frowned as they surveyed the crumbling headstones, trash, and tangled weeds strangling Greenwood, the Birmingham, Alabama cemetery, in which their family had long ago laid their sister, Abby Mae Collins. Although most Americans do not know her name, Abby Mae is a national icon of sorts. The 13-year-old was a martyr of the civil rights movement, one of 4 girls who were murdered in the 1963 bombing of Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church a few days after the city's schools were integrated. Martin Luther King Jr. eulogized her, and her tombstone bears the rousing inscription, "She died so freedom might live." It was 30 years before her sisters could bear to visit her grave, and when they saw its neglected state, they immediately arranged to have Addie Mae moved to another, better maintained cemetery. However, workers who opened the grave recoiled in shock. It was empty, devoid of casket and corpse. And Addie Mae's body, like so many buried in black cemeteries throughout the South, is missing. No one can know with certainty who took the body or why, but many are convinced that her body joined the untold thousands of anonymous black cadavers on anatomist tables. Man, I believe it. I believe it. Skeletons in the closet. Skeletons in the closet. The Addie Mae's fate, is far from unique, was driven home by a grisly 1989 discovery during the breathlessly hot August of Augusta, Georgia. Construction workers renovated a stately 154-year-old Greek revival structure that once housed the Medical College of Georgia, MCG. Stumbled upon a nightmare cache beneath the building, and strewn beneath its concrete floor lay a chaos of desiccated bodies, body parts, and nearly 10,000 human bones and skull. Many bearing the marks of 19th century anatomy tools or numbered with India ink. The cool, sunless basement had preserved the remains remarkably well, and bones and human dissected material littered the floors, metal tubes, and even latrines. Ossified human remains spilled from broken vats that had once held cadavers preserved in alcohol, and jars held fetal organs in vanishing lakes of whiskey, an addiction that scientists had displayed the purloined bodies, using the alcohol as a preservative in addition to dissecting them. And because not only grave robbing, but also anatomical dissection were illegal in Georgia until 1887, there was no legal source of such bodies. They were stolen, and in a manner that outraged decency and violated the law. The disarticle nightmare was all that remained of the faceless people whose bodies had been dissected, then unceremoniously scattered in the basement amid the jumble of broken syringes, microscope slides, scalpels, old pill bottles, and other medical detritus. As years passed, medical personnel covered each stratum of human refuse with quicklime to quell the stench. And it doesn't say, but I wonder if they just cemented over all those bones and stuff that was in there. If they was just throwing lime over everything, you know. Scientists determined that most of the remains dated from the 19th century. And detailed analysis of the bones and surrounding materials revealed that 70% of the bones in the basement were those of African Americans, although blacks constituted only 42% of the area's population. It's a big discrepancy. The late Robert Blakely, then chair of the Georgia State University's Department of Anthropology, gathered a multidisciplinary team, which later reported on almost every scientific and humanistic approach to analyzing the 9,800 human bones the MCG had used between 1835 and 1912. The ethnically diverse, one-third African American scientific team included medical doctors, archaeologists, anthropologists, medical historians, anatomists, biochemists, population geneticists, nutritionists, and even folklorists who analyzed a great deal of information about the subjects' bodies, lives, and cultures from the MCG remains. They determined age from the age-specific group infusing the bones, such as sutures of the skulls and wrist bones, the angle of pelvic bones, and bone thickness and ratios reveal gender. Many physiological and medical methods certified racial identification, and the separate lives of blacks and whites in the mid-19th century South provided much of the definitive racial data. Blacks and whites ate different diets, wore different clothes, suffered from different disorders, worked at different occupations, took different medications, and died from different diseases and disorders, many of which left their marks on bones. And area residents, black and white, were also questions about their knowledge and beliefs concerning the school's activities. And this inclusive approach allowed the scientists to do more than interpret medical truths. They also listened to the previously voiceless African American victims of body stealing. Via interviews and questionnaires, blacks finally were able to contribute their perspective to the hospital record. Yes, sir. Hard one, too. Yes, sir. That was the hard fist bump. You're going to break some bones when you get older, boy. The basement was filled with mostly black bodies, not by accident, but by design. As the 19th century progressed, doctors' needs for cadavers for medical education and training surged, but dissection was abhorrent, and shameful fate. A shameful fate reserved for the most heinous criminals, who received a double sentence of execution and dissection. As a result, physicians appropriated the bodies of enslaved persons with no legal rights, or those of free blacks with no rights that a white man was obligated to respect. The bodies in the basement had been spirited by night from the graveyard, but not from just any graveyard. Most were taken from the Cedar Grove Cemetery, an African American burial ground. We know this for several reasons: physiological, anthropological, and nutritional assessments of the bones and other remains established that 3/4 of them came from blacks, and Cedar Grove had held back bodies exclusively since the Civil War. And since its founding, Black Augusta residents had constantly complained of grave robbing there. And also, the college's 4 or 5 porters had all named the Black Cemetery in their periodic reports on the prevalence of the cadavers they provided to students each term. In 1908, lecturers of the students, for example, Porter, Grandison, Harris, described his techniques and named Cedar Grove as his milieu. His milieu. M-I-L-I-E-U. I'm going to pronounce it milieu until I see differently. M-I-L-I-E-U. Milieu. The milieu. Cadavers as his milieu. I'm gonna say go-to. It's like a go-to. They use it as, these were his go-to things to get. Milieu. M-I-L-I, militia. M-I-L-I-E, M-I-L-I. Milieu, environment. Milieu, which means environment. Cedar Grove in a 1908 lecture to the students, for example, Porter, Grandison, Harrison described his techniques and named Cedar Grove as his environment, or as his milieu. Other eyewitness accounts verify this, such that the MCG professor Eugene Murphy, MD, whose 1938 memoirs described how he accompanied Harris to Cedar Grove as a young medical student seeking bodies. And half a century later, the MCG scientific assessment helped to validate black tales of night doctors who reaped grim harvests in black cemeteries. The school's dissecting tables and finally its basements became their victims' only resting places. But the basement lacked even the minimal dignity of the meanest grave. It was devoted or funerary artifacts making the social worth, or even to the very presence of the death, the dead. That had been no attempt to identify. There had been no attempt to identify the bones, nor to arrange the remains in broken glassware, food containers, patient medicine bottles, and even the remains of vivisected animals. Just another heap of discarded training material. At first blush, robbing black graveyards to fill white anatomist laboratories appears a pure racial issue, but men like Grandis and Harris complicated the picture because they were black. And in 1852, the MCG bought Bella Islands on the South Carolina slave auction block for $700. Man, that was a lot back then. The school had not purchased a strong man just to clean its floors. Its chief duty was to rob graves. And MCG faculty taught Harris to read, which enabled him to glean details of deaths and the dates of funeral services from obituaries. He would return after nightfall and pull bodies from the fresh grave, which with his powerful arms. After the Civil War, the former slave became a Reconstruction judge in South Carolina. But when African Americans lost their newfound political power, the MCG offered Harris his old job at $6 a month. And although he eventually learned some anatomy and assisted in training students, Harris remained an object of affectionate derision among faculty members who called him judge while issuing cleaning orders. But he was feared by blacks who knew that he was raiding Cedar Grove for bodies. And when he died in 1911 of heart failure, Harris is a prime example of a cadaver procurer or a resurrectionist. And until the late 1770s, a resurrectionist meant a believer in physical or spiritual resurrection. Then the term underwent a sea change, becoming an ironic label for a man who unearthed bodies for illicit dissection. The other common term was resurrection man. And many medical schools found it convenient to leave the plundering of black cemeteries to black grave robbers because the faculty tried to distance themselves from resurrectionists who were caught with the goods. But the schools were obviously providing a market for the bodies, so their claims that the porters were overzealous freelancers were rarely convincing. To acknowledge the occasional medical victimization of blacks by blacks is considered heretical, but it is also an ugly fact. The nature of the medical abuse is racial, but class and self-interest could play pivotal roles, as with the black resurrectionists. We can only condemn the sad horror hidden in the basement of the MCG, but it is critically important to realize that the handling of the discovery provides a hopeful note because the MCG resisted the temptation to minimize or hide its ugly history and cooperated fully with the scientific team. And although belated, this frankness fosters an atmosphere in which it is possible to nurture trust. Yeah, right. Augustus African Americans may one day participate in research without fear that they may be exploited and abused. Don't know about that one. Other construction sites throughout the country have yielded evidence of medical grave robbing. The largest and earliest African burial site in the nation was revealed on June of 1991 during preparations to build on the Lower Manhattan site of what is now the Foley Square Federal Office Tower building in New York City. Construction workers unearthed 427 skeletons in what had been consecrated as the Negro burying ground in the 18th century. And in 1992, the team of Michael Blakely, director of Howard University's W. Montague Cobb Biological Anthropology Laboratory, found widespread evidence of grave robbing, including missing coffins, as well as bodies and skulls that displayed anatomist marks. And despite the frequent characterization of blacks as syphilitic or syphilitic, the team did not find the characteristic ridges caused by the disease on the cadaver's bones. And smaller cadavers, disposal sites, have been found on the campuses of the University of Michigan and the Medical College of Virginia, and more such remains will undoubtedly be unearthed. And people still want to go to these colleges, man. And people to think that people still want to go to these colleges. With all the things that, so-called blacks are in aversion against or in opposition against, you would think that, they wouldn't want to go to some of these places. And when you hear about people coming up missing on college campuses, now it starts to, with the reading of this, it will start me to think or believe that maybe they're still doing these processes. Maybe the cadavers, or maybe people are coming up missing and becoming cadavers to use in dissection and experimentation to help find cures or help move forward the, as it says, the anatomy, the physiologists, the anatomists, and others would use. Why did physicians begin amassing black bodies in the 19th century? Early in that century, the parish school or hospital movement transferred the continental focus from traditional heroic measures of dubious efficacy to clinical-based scientific medicine based upon a system of rigorous scientific education, anatomical knowledge, and the experimentation-based therapeutics. A detailed scientific study of the human body began to supplement the memorization of materia medica, the formal student study of therapeutics. A detailed systematic study of the human body began to supplement the memorization of materia medica, the formal study of therapeutics, which was the forerunner of pharmacology. It was no longer sufficient for the amphitheater of students to watch a professor perform a single anatomical dissection. The nascent physician himself required the intimate familiarity that could come only from the dissection of human cadavers. And in addition to the needs of medical students, clinicians and researchers needed bodies to autopsy in order to understand the process by which diseases ravage the body and to understand the real as opposed to the supposed causes of death. At least so medical school professors said when urging lawmakers to give them greater access to cadavers. Yet Yale historian John Harley Warner observes that it would be decades before physicians were knowledgeable enough to use the information that gleaned from autopsies to heal. At first, The anatomical course served as just another badge of professionalism, and whatever the true cause, the need for human bodies escalated sharply. Practical or not, anatomical courses were now the rigor of medical training, and medical school applications soared. And this further fueled a hunger for corpses, which the laws of the era made very difficult to satisfy. The only legal source of bodies for dissection resulted from the double sentence of execution and dissection, which was quite rare and reserved as punishment for only the most heinous murderers. Dr. A.B. Crosby described an execution and dissection sentence pronounced on a black man who was hung about 1800 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Crosby's first-person account of the subsequent autopsy evokes the appallingly circus-like atmosphere, one hard to distinguish from the characterizing a lynching. All the neighboring physicians were invited to the present and were requested to bring any dissecting instrument they might deem of use. And tradition says that one brought a handsaw, another an axe, still another a butcher's cleaver, and a fourth came armed with a large carving knife and fork. The cuticle of this unfortunate ethope was subsequently tanned and cut up into small pieces as souvenirs. And the invasive violation involved the anatomical dissection of the corpse ran counter to very strong 19th century sentiments regarding the sanctity of the body. And today, the dead body is an alien entity that we encounter briefly in a hospital, a funeral home, or a place of worship. But in the 18th and 19th centuries, people tended to die at home rather than in hospitals, and the body, imbued with religious and social significance, was lovingly cared for in the way that bound the dead person to his family and society. Oh yeah, they don't do that shit today. Our nose keep itching, man. The corpse was carefully bathed and groomed, and post-mortem photographs, portraits, and other images are often created and distributed. This care of the body certified the person's immunity. Dissection. Anatomical dissection meant even more. It was the extension of slavery into eternity, because it represented a profound level of white control over their bodies, illustrating that they were not free for even in death. And burial rituals were so psychologically important that insurance companies sold blacks how do I pronounce this? A macabre Social Security by collecting relatively high weekly payments toward funeral expenses. A macabre. M-A-C. We're going to finish this page off. That's all we're going to the bottom of this page, and we're going to stop. And we'll probably finish it off later on today. We'll probably finish off chapter 5 later on in the second reading, or the second episode for today. Physicians, however, ascribe blacks' horror of post-mortem dissection to superstition, complaining that even during epidemics, they avoided hospitals because they feared ending up on anatomist slabs. But whites quietly shared this revulsion, including doctors who avoided dissecting the bodies of their colleagues. And as a result of widespread discomfort with dissection, 18th century physicians and students resorted to frenzied, surreptitious dissection of the hospital dead before family or friends could arrive to claim the body. They also preyed upon the bodies of the socially and legally powerless Black Americans. And for 100 years, young white assistant professors of anatomy and uneducated Black hospital porters shared the same key responsibility, the furtive procurement of Black corpses. And such exploitation of the dead was hardly limited to the South. Most of the bodies used by New York City, Columbia University, and New York University were from the Negroes' burying ground. And in 1712, and again in 1741, New York slave rebellions were actuated in part by the refusal of slave owners to allow slaves to bury their dead. We're going to stop there. We're going to stop there. And that has been the first part of chapter 5, The Restless Dead of the Medical Apartheid by Miss Harriet A. Washington. Miss Harriet A. Washington. The dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to the present. And so far, man, there's a lot going on. A lot of things that would definitely lean more to the side of why, so-called Blacks definitely have the want to not to go to the doctor. They do not want to go to the doctor, man. The hatred or the distrust in hospitals runs deep and very much well so. They have reason for it to run deep. Man. It seems like the pink people always looking for a cure for something. The pink folks. Say that again, sir.
We need a blank piece of paper.
All right, sir. Do you know where the blank pieces of paper are in your room, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so go get you one, son. These type of things are the things that you don't have to ask me for, son. You don't have to ask me for a blank piece of paper. You want to draw? You have plenty for you. That's what I gave it to you for. That's why I set it up, so you can see where it is and be able to utilize it. So go get as many pieces of blank paper as you want, my son. Draw what you want to draw. Write what you want to write. Be free and do those things, but make sure you do what your teacher tells you to do first and foremost, okay?
Okay.
Let me get it. Oh, my boy. Keep doing a great job. You're doing wonderfully, sir. You're doing wonderfully. Keep up the good work. You understand?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, that was this episode. And we'll keep pushing up. We shall keep on pushing. Keep on pushing. We are moving along in the book a lot faster than I thought. But hey, I like it. Look how much I done read. Oh, man. And I actually was thinking, I really actually was assuming that this book was going to have me stumped a lot more than it has, especially with a lot of the medical terms. The medical terms they still stump me some, but they're easier than what I thought it was going to be, and they're a lot less than what I thought it was going to be. I thought that it was going to have a plethora more, or definitely a lot more of the damn medical terminology that I wasn't going to be able to pronounce or understand. So, but hey, we worked our body. We just worked our mind by rolling through the sea of pages of Miss Harriet Washington's book. Roll, roll, roll. So now we got to do the workout going out. Man, we worked our body, work our mind, work our body again on the going out of the episode. So get up, get off your lazy behind. Do 25 things, 25 things, 25 somethings. It don't matter what them something is. Somethings is to you. Just do 25 somethings and make sure you feel it, man. Make sure you feel it. Do not cheat your body. Do something, grab something, and do something that's going to make you breathe. Oh, that was heavy. Do something, man. Do something. Get your ass up. Do something. Don't be lazy. I'm going to do the second half of what I did. I'm going to throw this thing 25 times. I'm about to go feel like I'm at work on Amazon or on UPS or FedEx. So I'm going to do, I'm gonna get ready to toss them big bags of chicken feed up to my people. 25 bags of chicken feed. That's what y'all need? 25 bags? I got you. Hold on. Catch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Pick up that chicken feed, boy. Get that chicken feed up there. Throw that chicken feed up there. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Almost there. 4 more. 5 more. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 25 bags of chicken feed. 50-pound bags of chicken feed I done tossed up them. Anyway, yeah, that was that. I'd like to thank everybody who stopped by, took a gander, got an earful of the medical apartheid by Mrs. Harriet A. Washington. We're going to keep pushing through the book. You know, one book at a time, one session at a time, one episode at a time, one chapter at a time, one paragraph at a time, one page at a time, here a little, there a little, until we find the things that we can learn and grow from within the sea of pages of any of these books that we grab hold of. What can we learn and grow from? What can we use to help us succeed in our lives? What can we use to help us grow from day to day? You know, be a better you, a better version of you, whoever you are. Keep pushing, keep pushing. Don't let the naysayers stop you, even though it may be hard. But let's keep going. Let's keep going and keep growing, man. Shalom, everybody. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. And until the next episode, man, of Reading with Shiloh. I'm out here, baby. Shiloh. Holla at me, man. Holla at me. Leave me a comment, something, whatever. Shit, let's keep growing the channel. I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers. Let's keep pushing. 200 more to go. 200 subscribers more to go. And then I'm 1,000 in the door. 1,000 in the door. Hey, shalom, everybody. Hope y'all have a wonderful day. Hope y'all have a wonderful day. Shalom. Shiloh out. I'm out here. And you out here too, I hope. Come on, sucker.